have been disenfranchised. When we raised concerns, and I filed a lawsuit months ago to get rid of the electronic voting machines, they said we were crazy.
Let's do some fact checking. They said she was crazy for saying that the voting machines were changing votes, assisting in fraud. And that is crazy. In every election, issues arise, including with machines. But there's still no evidence of fraud, no evidence that Katie Hobbs, being Secretary of State, had anything to do with the results or the issues that occurred in Maricopa County.
On Election Day, nearly half of all polling locations had problems with tabulating machines and printers. Malfunctioning tabulation machines forced voters to wait in line for hours to exercise their sacred right to vote.
Well, again, that isn't really true about nearly half. But yes, there were issues in Maricopa County in particular with vote counting machines. And yes, people had to wait or place their ballots in a place to be counted later. By the way, waiting online is something that happens in many big cities around America when it comes to voting. But she offers no evidence that Katie Hobbs was responsible for any of it. Many secretaries of state have run for governor. And did I mention that she actually lost in Maricopa County, the place we're talking about? So I'm not sure how she thinks this proves that the issues with the machines that led to delays, et cetera, would somehow have changed anything in her favor.
Our election officials failed us miserably. What happened to Arizonans on Election Day is unforgivable. Tens of thousands of Maricopa County voters were disenfranchised.
Now, she has no evidence about tens of thousands being disenfranchised, but she has to pick a number, potentially big enough to make up for the fact that she's losing by over 16,000 votes right now.
Rest assured, I have assembled the best and brightest legal team, and we are exploring every avenue to correct the many wrongs that have been done this past week.
But what exactly does that mean? You know, I support any candidate's opportunity to challenge an election in court, but what avenues are there here for her? Joining me now is David Bodney, an Arizona attorney who's handled election law matters, including election law contests throughout his career, and Stan Barnes, Arizona-based former state legislator, a Republican, who's been personal friends with Kari Lake for 20 years. Gentlemen, thanks very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, Stan, before we get to the legal, let me ask you the practical. You came on the show a couple nights ago, and you predicted that Kari Lake would eventually concede. You had said it's not going to be tonight. It may not be tomorrow night, but you did think that she'll eventually concede. Do you still stand by that?
Good evening, Dan. And I think the short answer is no, I don't stand by that. It was a function of my hope for her. I think she's got a great future in politics. As I said on your show, she's found politics and politics has found her. She's the most talented, natural politician I've seen in Arizona in my 30 years of doing this. But apparently in the divergent path in the woods, she's decided to go the fight the election route and whatever that leads to versus a graceful step out of the limelight and wait for the next turn.
And you haven't talked to her, have you, since we spoke?
No, we've traded texts, and it was just a personal friendship kind of text, but we haven't talked about the specifics of what she's going to do next or not going to do next. All
right, so David Bodney, she says she has gathered the finest legal team. I'm just not certain what that legal challenge is at this point. Can you give us any insight into what that legal challenge could be?
Sure, and good evening, Dan. Hi, Stan. It would be a statutory action, a statutory election contest, and it would have to be filed very quickly, within 5 days of the canvass. There are only 5 grounds for an election contest, and as best I can tell, she will have a very steep hill to climb to make those arguments in court.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.